The first thing I noticed was the bounce house. It sat there like a giant inflatable monument to someone else's audacity, right in the middle of my backyard. Then I spotted the DJ tent with speakers that could probably be heard 3 blocks away. But what really made my jaw drop were the 89 strangers sipping wine and nibbling on catered shrimp skewers across my freshly mowed lawn. I approached a man who was balancing a charcuterie cone in one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. His tie was loosened, and he had that satisfied look of someone enjoying free food at someone else's expense. I cleared my throat and asked him whose party this was supposed to be. He smiled broadly and said with genuine enthusiasm that Patricia Blackstone had told everyone they could use the community park for her retirement celebration. He even complimented me on the great lawn maintenance. There was just one massive problem with his statement. That community park he was referring to was actually my private property. So I did what any reasonable property owner would do in this situation. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, poured myself a tall glass of iced tea from my kitchen, and settled into one of my own lawn chairs to watch what I knew would become an absolutely legendary suburban meltdown. My name is David Harrington, and I am a quiet, divorced, semi-retired land surveyor who values peace and privacy above almost everything else. 3 years ago, I bought 2.3 acres on the edge of Maple Ridge Estates, which includes a wide stretch of grass that I keep perfectly manicured, a small pond I stock with fish every spring, and a decorative fence I intentionally keep unlocked so the local deer can pass through during their evening walks. What it does not include is permission for party planners to set up shop whenever they feel like it. Patricia Blackstone, on the other hand, is our HOA president, and she runs this neighborhood like she is directing a military operation crossed with a passive-aggressive book club. She carries a clipboard everywhere she goes and has perfected the art of the condescending smile that never quite reaches her eyes. Patricia once issued a $75 fine to my neighbor for putting his Halloween decorations out on September 29th, claiming it violated the seasonal decor timeline outlined in subsection 12 of the HOA guidelines. She is the type of person who introduces herself with a bone-crushing handshake followed immediately by a 6-paragraph email about proper mailbox height requirements. The whole disaster started about 3 weeks ago when Patricia began casually referring to my land as the shared green space during HOA meetings, despite being corrected not once but twice with actual property maps. I thought I had made things crystal clear when I showed her my deed at the last meeting, but apparently Patricia has selective hearing when it comes to facts that inconvenience her grand plans. Then came the Facebook post that should have been my first red flag. Patricia had written in the neighborhood group with barely contained excitement about her big retirement party at what she called the Maple Ridge Pavilion, which she clarified in parentheses was actually my backyard. I honestly thought it was some kind of bizarre joke, or maybe she had posted in the wrong group by mistake. Surely nobody would be that brazenly entitled. But then the rental company showed up with folding tables at 7 in the morning. Then the catering van pulled into my driveway like they owned the place. Then a man carrying industrial extension cords knocked on my door asking where he could plug in the margarita machine because he needed a dedicated circuit to avoid tripping the breaker. That is when I realized this was actually happening. I marched across my own lawn to confront Patricia, who was directing the placement of a chocolate fountain near my prize-winning rose bushes. She looked up at me with that practiced smile of hers like I had just interrupted her during an important spa treatment. She said my name in that sing-song way that made it sound like I was being unreasonable just by existing in my own space. When I demanded to know what she thought she was doing, she waved her hand dismissively and explained that technically my property was adjacent to the HOA easement, which in her mind somehow meant it was fair game. She claimed she had put flyers up to notify everyone, then pointed to a single piece of paper taped crookedly to a mailbox 3 houses down. The flyer, I noticed, conveniently failed to mention whose property the party would actually be held on. She added with a patronizing tilt of her head that it was not like I was using the space anyway, as if my lack of hosting massive unauthorized gatherings somehow transferred ownership to her. The casual dismissal of my property rights made my blood pressure spike in a way my doctor would definitely not approve of. I took a deep breath, turned on my heel without saying another word, and walked calmly back to my house. Once inside, I picked up my phone and called 911. I explained in a measured tone that there were approximately 90 trespassers currently on my property, including someone who had illegally connected a commercial beverage blender to my garage outlet without permission. The dispatcher paused for a moment, probably processing the unusual nature of the call, then asked me to confirm that this was indeed my property. I rattled off the tax map parcel number from memory, 22B-16, and mentioned I had all the documentation ready including the official plat. The deputies arrived in less than 15 minutes, which must have been some kind of suburban response time record. One of them walked directly up to the man serving shrimp and asked if he had paid to be here. The shrimp server blinked in confusion and responded that he had brought a side dish, as if that somehow constituted payment for venue rental. That is when the beautiful chaos truly began. People started scrambling in every direction like startled chickens, abandoning their drinks and appetizers in their rush to figure out what was happening. Patricia was shrieking about something called shared use doctrine and implied permission, throwing around legal terms she had clearly Googled 5 minutes ago. The DJ stood frozen at his turntable, calling out to ask if he should stop the music or keep playing, his voice cracking with uncertainty. In the midst of all this confusion, someone stumbled backward and fell directly into my koi pond with a splash that sent water cascading over the decorative rocks. A teenager took advantage of the chaos to run off with one of the folding chairs, probably figuring nobody would notice in all the commotion. The officers calmly but firmly began informing people they needed to leave immediately, and the margarita machine was unplugged and marked as evidence. Patricia tried desperately to argue that this was all just a big misunderstanding between neighbors. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling frantically through what she claimed were HOA bylaws that supported her position. The officers, clearly experienced in dealing with this type of situation, asked her to produce written permission from the property owner. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a hand-drawn map on notebook paper that she had labeled Common Area with probably technically HOA written in parentheses underneath. That is when I played my ace. I produced my official survey documents, my deed with a raised seal still visible, and 3 separate notarized documents that confirmed my exclusive ownership of every square inch of land her party was currently occupying. I pointed to the bench near the pond and explained that I had built it myself 2 summers ago. I gestured to the fence and noted that I had personally stained it just last month. Then I swept my arm across the scene of confused strangers fleeing in their dress shoes and wedges, noting that they were all trespassing on my private lawn. The deputies issued Patricia a criminal trespassing citation on the spot. The lead officer explained that organizing an event on private property without permission could result in serious legal consequences. Patricia's face went through several shades of red before settling on a purple color I had never seen on human skin before. But the consequences did not stop there. The HOA board treasurer, a normally quiet woman named Susan who I later learned had not been invited to the party despite being on the board for 5 years, filed a formal ethics complaint against Patricia that same evening. The complaint cited gross misconduct, misuse of HOA authority, and bringing disrepute to the Homeowners Association. An emergency board meeting was called for the following Tuesday. During that meeting, which I attended as an interested party, Patricia tried to defend herself by claiming she had made an honest mistake about property boundaries. However, when board members pointed out that I had corrected her multiple times with actual documentation, her defense crumbled. The vote to remove her as HOA president was unanimous, even from her usual allies who were clearly embarrassed by the whole situation. Patricia was ordered to pay $3,800 in restitution for property damage, including the traumatized koi fish that required veterinary attention, the damaged lawn from the tent stakes, and the cleanup costs for the party debris left behind. She was also banned from holding any HOA board position for a minimum of 5 years. When the board president announced the 5-year ban, Patricia let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a shriek, her clipboard clattering to the floor as her hands went limp from shock.